Everyone, hope all's doing well. So, excuse me. I want to retract a video that I did, I think about 5, 6 days ago, maybe a week. And that was about the raid on the servers in Germany. I don't think I came down definitively that I believed it, but I was leaning that way because of General McInerney's statement of what happened. And like I said in that video, before that, when it first came out, I just kind of laughed to myself and almost did a video and said, don't believe this. The Army isn't in the business of doing this. And it would cause an international incident like you wouldn't believe. And then, they were saying at the U.S. consulate, the CIA there. But the more I thought about it, the more questions came to mind that didn't make any sense for this to be true. Number one is, if the CIA is hacking the election, why would they do it at the American consulate in Germany? Wouldn't you do it at some offshore site, some office building that you rented out for, for this purpose alone? So, and then if 5 U.S. soldiers were actually killed, we'd hear about that by now. Well, and so I did a little research on the 305th. And all the 305th is an advanced training organization. Well, you're not going to be using that type of organization for something like this. These kids haven't even gone out into the real army yet. So I tell you what I think's going on. And I'm gonna steal Scott Adams. He did a video today, Scott Adams morning coffee or something like that. And I think he explained it as well as can be explained. So this isn't my idea, my thoughts. It just makes sense. And I think General McInerney fell for this. He was either given disinformation or he's just getting senile in his old age. I don't know which. But my trust for him overrode a lot of common sense that I have on this issue. And I think that trust was misplaced. I don't know if this was again, if he's a product of disinformation or, like I said, I guess maybe he's getting senile. So let me explain this real quick. This is Scott Adams' perfect crime list. And I'll use the case in Pennsylvania where Sean Parnell and that, I did a video earlier on it. And the Supreme Court ruled that it was too late. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled it was too late. And they argued that they couldn't sue beforehand because nobody had been injured yet. So this is, no standing because nobody's been injured and it's too soon. So they couldn't sue about this issue before the election happened. After the election happened, they could sue, but then the Supreme Court ruled doctrine of laches, it's too late. So what the perfect crime is, you can't sue beforehand. Then once the election happens, there's a time limit based on the Constitution. For example, the electors have to be appointed by December 14th, and they have to report to Congress by January 8th, I believe it is. So what you do is you commit fraud. And the judge will say, okay, well, yeah, that's fraud. The black circles are fraud, but that's not enough to affect the election. Then you go and you find this one, and again, the judge says, okay, that's fraud, but it's not enough to flip the election. So we're not going to rule on it. Yes, there was fraud committed here, but it's not enough to affect the election. So then all these circles add up to massive fraud, but there's no fraud big enough you can find in one case that's going to affect the election. Therefore, the judge isn't going to rule on it. In the meantime, since there is a time limit of where you can go and put your resources in, professional disinformation people put out all this disinformation. Then the news reports, okay, that's fake news. That's fake news. You know, just like the servers in Germany. They may be there. I don't know, but the U.S. Army raiding it and 5 soldiers killed. Well, that's disinformation. Here. So there's so much disinformation created that you spend so much time and resources versus developing the fraud that you run out of time before the Constitution states that you have to have the electors in place. So I think what's going on is, the Democrats are professionals at this. They truly are. And they may have developed a perfect crime. Now, my line of thinking, but I don't know if the court is going to do this, because I think the court may side for the country's stability versus the actual law. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see how that rules. But, I watched the Arizona hearing, and there was an email that came out, and it was sent to the Department of Justice, every legislature in Arizona, and it stated that and at a Democratic meeting, September 10th, when no phones or recording devices were allowed in, they put together the plan, and they added 35,000 votes to this was Pima, I think, Pima County. They added 35,000 votes to every Democratic candidate. And they asked this election expert and computer guru, how do you prove this? And he said the only way we can prove this is do a forensic study on the computer. And I really wonder if even doing that is going to find this. But in my view, anyway, Pennsylvania and Michigan elections should be thrown out, at least for the president, because every precinct where they kept the poll watchers out, all them votes should be declared invalid. And people talk about disfranchising. Get this, I didn't know this. If you're in Arizona and you can't prove that you're a U.S. citizen, you can still vote. All you got to do is bring a bank statement or something like that in, and you get what's called a federal-only ballot, which means you can only vote for the president, senator, and congressman. You can't vote for any of the states. representatives or judges or anything like that, but you can vote for the feds. Tell me how that makes any sense. Tell me how that isn't ripe for fraud. I mean, Jesus. We could be talking millions of votes just in Arizona alone. They asked a congresswoman that was an expert on this, and she was sitting on a panel, and she explained what's going on. And she said, well, we do know that there was at least 41,000 of these votes in Pima County alone. You know, how do we have any guarantee of election? How is the Arizona vote right? How is, in Nevada, they passed a law, I don't know, about 8 years ago to give illegals driver's license. Well, that's all you need to get on the voter roll is a driver's license. How many illegal voters do we have in Nevada? You know, a lot of people feel that, and you know, another story, a guy wrote an affidavit, and he drove to New York. He's a truck driver. Watched them load ballots in his truck. They were in cases, right? Drove down to Harrisburg to drop it off where it was supposed to go. Went in and met with the expediter. The expediter said, you got to wait on the transportation supervisor. He waited on the transportation supervisor for 7 hours. The transportation supervisor showed up, told him to drive to Lancaster and drop his trailer off there. Now, this is all under oath, mind you. He asked the transportation supervisor for a ticket to verify his time. The transportation supervisor refused to give him a ticket. He drove down to Lancaster, unhooked his trailer, drove his truck to where he normally parks it, and went home. Next morning, he comes back to pick up his trailer, and it's gone. Nobody knows where that trailer is. Nobody knows where them ballots are. And the first thing I thought of, and then he later mentioned it, he thought it was strange. He said everything about this was strange. He said, I never talked to the transportation supervisor. My transportation supervisor is in my company. He's a contractor. He was in Postal Service. If the transportation supervisor for the post office has an issue, he talks to my boss. He doesn't talk to me. All these years, he had never even met a transportation supervisor. He only dealt with the expediter. And this facility where he picked up these ballots wasn't a letter processing facility. It was a package processing facility, a post office facility, but a packaging processing facility. He estimates there was hundreds, he's seen the ballots, that there were hundreds of thousands of ballots in the back of this truck that he picked up in New York to go down to Pennsylvania. And again, to this day, we do not know where that trailer or them ballots are. You know, make up your own mind, but I think the Supreme Court has to act on this. They have to. The fraud is just too much. All right, thank you all. Have a good day.